Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Francis Grucci, Superintendent of Wellington Schools, and it's my distinct honor to act as the Master of Ceremonies today. Today marks the 10th anniversary of 9/11, and in Wellington, as well as all over the country, the memorial here is the result of joint efforts. Today's memorial is a joint effort of all the Wellington public agencies and citizens who work together to make this possible. On behalf of the Wellington Safety Forces Memorial Committee and the Village of Wellington, I would like to welcome all surviving family members, all fire service, law enforcement, emergency medical service, personnel from Lorain County and surrounding counties, distinguished guests, member of our U.S. military, and all citizens representing the Village of Wellington and Lorain County. Today we take time to unveil a memorial dedicated to the honor of the men and women who have given their lives in the line of duty, as well as the surviving family members. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please stand as we escort our survivors to their seats. Representing law enforcement, Lorain County Sheriff's Office Honor Guard, and representing the fire service, the City of Ashland and Fire Department Honor Guard. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our national anthem, presented by Lori Long McConnell.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets regular, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er for the hand of the free and the home of the brave.
Gathered here. Likewise good that we hold dear in our memories the sacrifices exemplified by those who have gone before us. We thank them for their dedication, their courage, their sterling example, their heroic love. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. As today we bless and dedicate this fitting memorial, we thank those whose names are inscribed hereon, and we remember their families, their many friends, in prayer to God, whose presence they share this very day. On behalf of the extended Wellington community, we express our gratitude to those who conceived and brought to remarkable completion this important memorial.
My background is that of a history teacher. Many dates stand out in American history. The 4th of July, 1776, the Declaration of Independence. December 7th, 1941, the bombing of Pearl Harbor. November 22nd, 1963, the assassination of John F. Kennedy. July 20th, 1969, Apollo 11 lands on the moon. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin step foot. February 26, 1993, the attack on the World Trade Center, killing 6 and injuring 1,000. But never has a date stood more clearly in our minds than that of September 11th, 2001. Where were you at 8:46, 9:03, 9:40, and 10:07? I was at Marion Taft Middle School, walking the halls, greeting children like any other day. And at those times, everything changed. That day and that date has changed the way we as Americans live and continue to live each day. We've continued to try to make sense of 9/11. And as we gather here to honor all those public safety officers whose names are inscribed on this memorial, we also need to remember all those public safety officers that gave their lives 10 years ago on this date. And for all those public safety officers who've lost their lives across this great nation. Now, with words of official welcome and comments on behalf of the Village of Wellington, the Honorable Mayor, Barb O'Keefe.
My congratulations to the Wellington Safety Forces Memorial Association for having made this monument possible. We are gathered here today to dedicate this monument. This monument honors the virtue of service. This virtue of service is exemplified by our heroes and loved ones who made the ultimate sacrifice so that we may live in the land of the free and the home of the brave. This memorial is a lasting tribute to their dedication and service to our community. A hero is someone who has given his life to something bigger than himself or something other than himself. These men did just that. These men all gave their lives in the line of duty. They are our heroes. As Benjamin Harrison, the 23rd President of the United States, said at a memorial service, "We come not to mourn our heroes, but to praise them." We honor them in a joyous, thankful, triumphant commemoration of what they did. It is sadly ironic how it takes horrific events such as 9/11 to place things into perspective, but it has. The lessons learned from 9/11, the things taken for granted, the things that have been forgotten or overlooked, hopefully will never be forgotten again. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, in the very first poem he wrote when he was 13, said beautifully, "They are dead, but they live in each patriot's breast, and their names are engraved on honor's bright crest. The names of these men, our heroes, live on and are now engraved on this beautiful monument as a constant reminder of their heroic acts.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Also offering words on behalf of the Public Safety Forces, I would like to call on the following representatives: Wellington Village Police Department Chief Steve Rollins, Southern Lorraine County Ambulance District Executive Director Pat Wilkinson, and Wellington Fire District Chief Robert Walker.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm awed at the number of people that I see here today showing up to honor our fallen. I'm also honored to be up here speaking on behalf of the law enforcement for the Village of Wellington and the surrounding community. Just last week, there were some new statistics that came out that's startling. Every day, the safety service members, a lot of them that you see here standing before you, face a danger every time they go to work for their shift. Just last week, the United Mental Health Board put out new statistics that 1 out of 4 people in the United States are suffering from a mental health disorder. It could be anything as simple as mental stress, to schizophrenia, to drug and alcohol abuse. Every day, every one of the people that you see standing to the south face this kind of a disaster, a danger, every shift that they show up. There's not a person standing over there that can tell you that last week they didn't handle a call that was in regards to a mental health issue. This is something that our country is facing, largely due to our economy and to the stress that we're all facing. A lot of you, and I'm the one to get a lot of these calls, you may not always agree with the way we handle our jobs. You may not agree to the way they handled the fire. You may not even agree as to why they sat in your driveway for 10 minutes at a rescue squad call. But we're here for one reason, that's to serve and protect the people of Wellington and the surrounding community. All of these things that I have mentioned are one of the reasons that we're here today to honor these fallen officers. So remember, we're here for you to serve and protect. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Wellington Safety Memorial Dedication. Today we come together to honor the lives and the sacrifices of not only our department, but all departments. 10 years ago today, we as a nation suffered through a day when there were more lives lost than ever in a single attack. These people were going about their day just like any other day until their lives and the lives of their families were changed forever. Out of that rubble came the heroes of police, fire, and EMS. Today we are here to honor our local heroes: George Brenner, Edmund Smith, Roland Paul, George Foster, and Buzz Anderson. Fortunately, you'll notice the EMS side of the monument has no names of anyone fallen, but that does not mean we don't grieve. Because just like 10 years ago, when one of our agencies get cut, we all bleed. When one has joy, we all smile. And when one has a struggle, we share the burden. With that being said, we honor those and their families that paid the ultimate sacrifice for their community.
Good afternoon. I'm honored to speak on behalf of the safety forces, especially the fire service, which we represent. It's equally humbling to stand here in uniform today to speak about the many American heroes that we honor this day. The Memorial Committee and all of you that donated to create this spectacular memorial to commemorate our fallen heroes. Gathering today is one way to show our appreciation, our gratitude, and more importantly, how do we instill a deeper tradition of this special day for the coming generations of the safety forces that will serve our local community. We continue to provide the best protection, assistance, wherever and whenever needed. Statistics in New York City, the losses that were so tragic. September 11th, 2001. At least 2,985 people died September 11th during those attacks. There were 266 people on 4 planes. There were 2,595 people in the World Trade Centers, near it, including other buildings. 343 New York firefighters and paramedics. 23 New York police officers. 37 Port Authority officers. Thank you for being a part of today to celebrate the lives and legacies of those who have lost but not forgotten. Thank you again for this honor.
Thank you, Chiefs and Executive Director. At this time, I would like to draw your attention to my left as the Fire Chief, Chief Walker, the Police Chief, Chief Rollins, and the EMS Executive Director, Pat Wilkinson, unveil the memorial monument that is a tribute to public safety officers that have given their life serving the citizens of Wellington and Lorain County. At this time, with the presidential letter, Senator Gail Manning.
I am honored on behalf of myself and the other 32 Ohio senators to present to the Wellington Safety Service Forces with the Senate President's letter. On this day, as the nation remembers not only the innocent victims, but the first responders who lost their lives 10 years ago, it is only fitting that we take this time to show our deepest gratitude to our local first responders for their endless courage and bravery. Your service to your community is humbling and praiseworthy. We're very proud of you.
Thank you, Senator Manning. We're privileged to have with us today a gentleman who is no stranger to most of us. He's a native of Lorain County, born and raised in Henrietta Township. He served with the United States Marine Corps in the early 1950s, and in 1954 began his journalistic career when he was hired as a reporter and photographer for the Oberlin News Tribune. In 1960, he changed his career and he became a broadcast journalist when he was hired as a reporter for WEOL AM and WBEA FM in Elyria, Ohio. He was later named news director. In 1967, he started a career as a full-time reporter at WJW-TV. And for the next 38 years, he appeared in nearly every on-air capacity position with this station. In 1980, he was assigned to do a 5-part series about places viewers could enjoy by traveling on a 1-tank of gas. The series proved to be so popular that he continued this journey for the next 25 years and became the longest running travel segment in television history. He has received numerous awards for his journalism as well as member of the Broadcasters and Journalists organizations. In 2007, he was presented with the Ohio Radio and Television Hall of Fame Living Legacy Award. an honor which goes to one person each year that is a member of the Hall of Fame. In 2004, he left television but continues to travel and contributes a column each month in the Cleveland Plain Dealer. He has even authored 7 books about travel in Ohio. The latest book is his memoir entitled Tales from the Road, highlighting his career and some behind-the-scenes stories about radio and television. He also writes a weekly internet blog entitled One Tank Trips. I am pleased to present to you our guest speaker, Mr. Neil Zerker.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start by thanking the Memorial Committee Chairperson Linda Biscup and her committee for inviting me to be a part of this special ceremony on this very memorable day. It's truly an honor to be here. If ever there was a demonstration of bravery and of commitment displayed daily by our police and fire departments, it was on this date 10 years ago. While thousands of victims and onlookers ran the other way, literally hundreds of safety forces ran forward into what they had to know, or certainly suspected, was probably certain death. The events of that day in New York City, Washington, D.C., and in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, are ingrained on our hearts and minds forever. It also changed the way we live and put in question some of the liberties that we've always taken for granted. Yet the uncommon valor displayed by those police, fire, and emergency forces that day is the very same bravery we see every day in towns, villages, and communities across our country. Police, fire, and emergency workers who put personal safety aside to help people they do not even know. It's altogether fitting and proper that we set aside this time on this day in Wellington to dedicate this memorial to the Wellington Safety Forces members who gave their very lives in service to this community. Carved in stone are the names like Roland M. Paul, Assistant Fire Chief George Foster, Al Buzz Anderson, Edmund G. Smith, and Marshal George Brenner. To paraphrase a quote by former President Ronald Reagan, some people wonder all their lives if they have made a difference. Police and firemen don't have that problem. Some of their stories are still fresh, the emotions are still very raw, while others are fading into the cobwebs of history. This is a day to take another look at some of their stories. Sometimes in our lives we see trouble coming from a distance. I'm certain that firefighter Al Buzz Anderson, married, father of 4, saw trouble coming when he responded to a 911 call of a teen driver who had ignored a road closed sign and drove around the sign and into a flooded highway in Wellington Township on June 22nd in 2006. The rising waters from a nearby stream swamped the teen's car, trapping him in the swirling currents. He and another teen passenger abandoned the car and climbed into some trees above the flood. An experienced diver, Anderson hooked a safety rope around his body and waded into the deep flooded areas to recover the youngsters. He carried a small portable boat, but the force of the water was too strong, forcing him back to dry land. A call went out for a larger boat. Anderson realized the waters were getting higher, and so he waded back in to make a second attempt to reach the 2 teens. The waters were quickly rising, and the currents were very strong, too strong even for the well-trained Anderson. In his desperate efforts to reach the trapped teens, he was overcome by the power of the flood and was sucked under the water. By the time his fellow firefighters were able to frantically drag Buzz from the flooded area, he was unconscious. They rushed him to the hospital. Sadly, all efforts to save him were too late, and he was pronounced dead. Meanwhile, rescuers using a larger boat finally reached the careless teenagers and brought them to safety. But the teen driver's irresponsible act had cost Buzz Anderson his life. The very first Wellington member of the safety forces to be killed in the line of duty was Town Marshal George Brenner. It was late on the night of July 17th, back in 1883, when Brenner, walking the streets on night patrol, came across 2 men in an alley behind the Union Block. The men had just completed burglarizing the nearby office of the Western and Lake Erie Railroad when confronted by Brenner. One of the men had a gun, and several shots rang out. Brenner was hit in the neck, the bullet tracking down into his chest. He died a short time after the shooting. A manhunt of the town turned up one burglary suspect trying to hide the gun in the livery stable. He was 29-year-old John Young. and he told authorities that the actual shooter was 19-year-old August Terry of Terre Haute, Indiana, who, following the shooting, had fled the town. They alerted nearby communities by telegraph. Railroad employees and the Oberlin City Marshal found Terry hiding in a boxcar over in Kipton, Ohio. Both Terry and Young were sentenced to prison, Terry for life. He died 2 years later when he set fire to his prison bed and succumbed to burns. Early in my career as a journalist, I worked at WEOL in Illyria. At midnight, when my shift was completed, I used to drive to the county jail in Illyria and ride along with sheriff's deputies as they went on patrol. I wanted to learn more about what really happens in the early morning hours when officers patrol lonely streets and country roads. I learned very quickly that one of the more dangerous calls that police had to respond to were those involving domestic disturbances. They were dangerous because these were the situations that could suddenly turn very violent when you least expected it. That was true of Wellington Patrolman Ed Smith. Ed was a World War II veteran who saw service in both Europe and the South Pacific. Married, father of 2 girls, he decided to become a police officer. In 1955, he took a job as police chief in Wheaton. It was a one-man department. He was the only member. One-man departments were fairly common in small towns in those days. The chief had to be tough and smart. He had no one to back him up in a bar fight or a domestic dispute. When his badge and force didn't work, he had to rely on his knowledge of people to talk his way into a peaceful settlement of the issue. Being the only policeman in town is also a lot of work. You're on call 24/7. So Ed Smith decided he needed more time to spend with his family. So he applied to the Wellington Police Department and appointed a patrolman on March 4th, 1957. On the day after his 39th birthday, March 4th, 1957, just 1 day short of 2 months since he had joined the Wellington PD, he was on patrol when he was called to a disturbance at 300 Cortlandt Avenue. A 40-year-old ex-con, Walter Bioman from Cleveland, had been dating a 22-year-old woman who lived in the house. She had broken off the relationship, and Bioman, who had arrived at the ex-girlfriend's house uninvited, was arguing with friends and relatives of the woman who had called police when Bioman refused to leave. As the argument raged on, Bioman told the group he was going to his car to get a gun. He was just getting out of his auto with a pistol tucked in his waistband of his trousers when Officer Smith pulled up. Seeing the policeman, Bioman jumped back into his car and started to speed off. Learning the man had a gun, Officer Smith gave pursuit. The chase lasted a little over a mile and ended when Bioman made a turn from Parker Street onto Maple. Maple was a dead-end street. Although no one witnessed the start of the confrontation, it's believed that seeing he was trapped, Bioman, with his gun in hand, leaped out of his car and fired at Officer Smith, emptying his gun at the policeman, who was just getting out of his cruiser. Smith returned the fire, but he had been hit 3 times and he collapsed. Ed Smith, who was still conscious, tried to crawl back into his cruiser, presumably to reach his radio and call for help. Bioman, his gun now empty, ran to the police cruiser and with no bullets left in his pistol, used it to beat Officer Smith around the head as he pulled him back out of the car and onto the ground. He struck him so hard that he bent the trigger guard of the pistol, jamming the gun. With Officer Smith barely conscious, Bioman grabbed the policeman's pistol, then ran back to his own car and sped off, leaving Patrolman Smith bleeding on the ground. The 2 men, Edward Auble and Luster Easterline, were working nearby and had witnessed the last of the shootout and ran to assist Smith. Although critically wounded, had struggled to pull himself upright again. They asked if he had gotten the license number of Bioman's car. He managed to say no before he collapsed onto the seat of his cruiser and died. At this time, other police from around Lorraine County were approaching with sirens wailing. Bioman didn't get very far. On West Road, he tried to take a sharp curve too fast. His tire blew and he careened across a ditch and slammed into a utility pole guy wire. As deputies arrived, Bioman leaped out of his car and fired 1 shot, but his gun jammed. He threw up his hands, and it was over. Bioman was found guilty of first-degree murder on July 3rd of 1959. Trembling and praying, he became one of the last persons executed in the Ohio electric chair. Walter Bioman lies in an unmarked grave in Columbus, while Officer Edmund Smith's name is inscribed with honor on the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Wall in Washington, D.C. Where do we get such men as these? These were the words of General Paul X. Kelly, Commandant of the Marine Corps, on the arrival home of the bodies of 283 Marines killed in a terrorist attack in Beirut, Lebanon in 1983. He said, "Where do we get such men? Where do we get such men of courage, such men of dedication, such men of patriotism, such men of pride?" And the simple answer is we get them from every clime and place, and from every race, every creed, and from every color. I would like to add to that thought that we also get such men of courage from Wellington, Ohio, men like Ed Smith, Buzz Anderson, George Brenner, and the other names of this new memorial. May God bless each one of them. Remember, to live on in the memory and hearts of those we live behind is not to die.
This ceremony is about remembering and acknowledging lives lost and recalling the sacrifice and courage of their survivors. For all the members of the many safety and emergency forces that have made the supreme sacrifice of their lives. As we honor and remember all those whose names have been inscribed on our memorial, we have chosen surviving family members and officers to remember and honor our local heroes of the Wellington Police and Fire Departments. As a tribute to all their lives, we recall their sacrifice.
Detail! Set! Hut! Thank you, Mr. Scrushy. I have the distinct honor of talking briefly about our fallen in the fire service. Firefighter Roland Paul, final call, July 26, 1924. While we were responding to a call on South Main Street, which is now 23,121 State Route 58, firefighter Roland Paul was driving the department's first powered vehicle, a 1922 Rio. The truck had an open cab. He lost control of his vehicle. The truck rolled over, pinning him against a tree, and he lost his life. Assistant Chief Weatherby has placed a carnation in his memory. Firefighter Assistant Chief George Foster, final call, February 10th, 1975. George Foster served the Wellington Fire District for 33 years. Foster rose through the ranks as a firefighter, eventually serving as Assistant Chief. As a firefighter, eventually serving as Assistant Chief of the department while responding to a structure fire on Quarry Road. A very cold morning. It was 15 below zero that morning. He suffered a fatal heart attack. His daughters, Jean Caldine and Mrs. Parks, are available. They are honoring him today by placing the carnation in his honor. Thank you. Firefighter, diver, Swiftwater personnel, Alan Buzz Anderson. His final call, June 26, 2006. At 1:18 p.m., June 22nd, 2006, the Wellington Fire District responded to a 911 call of a water rescue in Wellington Township. The department's dive team members responded to the call with initial reports of 2 juveniles in the water, as we earlier spoke. There were road closed signs, barricades, prohibiting the access to that area. But still, we lost a falling diver, firefighter that afternoon. And we're honored as his mother, Al Anderson, his father, were here to place the carnation in his honor. Alan was also a firefighter for the Wellington Fire District 12 years. The fire service is very proud of our 3 comrades that we've lost over the years. And I want to thank all of you for being here today and honoring these gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you once again for the honor to be up here. I am here to represent the fallen officers on the law enforcement part of the safety services. Village Marshal George Brenner, July 17, 1883. Officer Brenner, Village Marshal Brenner, I should say, excuse me, responded to 2 suspicious people in the area of what was then our local drugstore. Unknown to him, they had robbed the train station here in town. He was assisted by his wife, who kind of stayed back in the background while he went to check on these suspicious people. She heard gunfire and heard him scream that he had been shot. She helped him back to their apartment, where she helped him into bed around 12:05 a.m. on July the 18th, 1883. Village Marshal George Brenner died. The second member of the law enforcement community here in the village of Wellington was Wellington police officer Edmund Smith. Edmund Smith on May the 4th, 1957, responded to a domestic dispute on Cortlandt Street. As he approached the scene, he was advised that a person that was armed was getting ready to flee the scene, with Officer Smith pursuing him. There was contact made between the two on Maple and Barker. At the time, Maple Street was just an alley. As Officer Smith was preparing to get out of his vehicle, the suspect jumped from his car, unloaded his gun at Officer Smith, striking him 3 times. The end of Officer Smith's shift, the end of his watch, was May 4th, 1957. Again, thank you very much.
They will forever be lost to us, but will never be forgotten. Now a special contingent of Wellington's law enforcement, fire service, and emergency medical service will place a wreath of honor at the memorial.
Detail! Set! Arm!
This wreath represents the lost lives of all public safety forces, not just within this community, but within the United States.
Detail! Order! Arm!
We ask and pray for God to protect each and every one of them. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand as we offer a moment of silence, which will then be followed by a 21-gun salute presented by the Avon Lake Police Department Rifle Squad, taps presented by Matthew Browd of Wellington High School Marching Band, and a flyover by the Cleveland Metro, St. Vincent's, and Med Flight.
Commander of the Rifle Squad, prepare to honor our fallen comrades.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated as we have closing remarks from Melinda Biscup, Committee Chairman of the Wellington Safety Forces Memorial.
On behalf of the Wellington Safety Forces Committee, I would like to thank everyone here today for attending this memorial dedication. Thank you. The committee members have spent countless hours organizing, getting donations, and selling bricks to raise funds necessary to build this beautiful monument. My thanks to them and to their ongoing fundraising efforts. The bricks are still available, and I hope if you've not already done so, to purchase one. I thank the business community and the people of Wellington and all the other cities that have donated their time and their money to help make this monument possible. Without their support, our safety forces would never have been able to complete this monument. Thanks to the Wellington Village Council. They welcomed our idea and set aside this site, this wonderful site, for this memorial. Many thanks to the Village of Wellington, the Village Council. Special thanks to Sergeant Randy Kubek, Lorraine County Sheriff's Office. Sergeant Kubek helped organize and supervise today's dedication. His guidance and expertise are truly appreciated. Thanks also to Sheriff Stamiti for allowing him to do this. Also, many thanks to Bob Box, Scott Markle, Kurt Gott, and all their crews. Lastly, my thanks go to Mayor Barb O'Keefe. I presented the idea and plans to her on May 19th, 2010, without hesitation. She loved the idea, told me to move forward, form a committee, and make this monument a reality. She handled details such as site, memorial design, and other issues, along with a wonderful village council. She attended some of our meetings and met with me weekly regarding the memorial to make sure all would run well. I would like to say that without Mayor O'Keefe and this wonderful, wonderful community, this memorial would not have been possible. So on behalf of the committee members and myself, a big thank you to everyone. Now, a little over a year and a half later, on September 11th, 2011, I proudly turn over the monument to you, the Village of Wellington. Thank you.
Let us bow in prayer. Gracious God, it is a joy to come together as community to honor and remember the lives and legacies that are memorialized on this monument today. And also to give thanks to those women and men who stand before us today, who serve and protect us as a community. We ask that as they go about their work, that your protection and presence is with them as they carry out their duties from this day forward. And let us go from here with gratitude for their dedication. Let us go from here that we never forget the sacrifice of the 5 men memorialized today. That we never forget the sacrifice of those who have served in the past on our fire, police, and ambulance forces. And let us go from here with the prayer that our safety forces are held safe as they go about their calling in service to you and to this community. We pray all this in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Berg. On behalf of the Wellington Safety Forces Memorial Committee and the Village of Wellington, we thank you for your support and your attendance here today. We invite everyone to join us now for some refreshments and fellowship in the Town Hall. But at this time, ladies and gentlemen, please stand and remain standing as we have a musical tribute by Jim Mariner as he plays Amazing Grace.